Welcome back, everybody. This is another episode of drift fishing, and we're going to really show you what we got going on for this pink salmon run. There's an estimated 7.6 million fish coming in the Puget Sound, staging up, and a lot of them are supposed to go up the Puyallup River and the Nisqually River. Actually, I'm sorry, it's forecasted a lot of them are supposed to go up the Green River and the Nisqually River. But I always know there's going to be a lot of them in the Puyallup River too. So this video is going to pretty much cover all the rivers that you're going to go drift fishing for. There's some different changes we're going to make for the Puyallup River. That's why this is going to be labeled the Puyallup River Rig. So basically, we're not going to have to use fluorocarbon. The reason is the watercolor on the Puyallup River is pretty brown and murky. So those fish are not going to see moss green. And that's the color I like to use. It's a lot cheaper. This is just basic Iserline, and it's mono. It's not fluorocarbon. You do not need fluorocarbon everywhere you go. I call it FC from now on in the video. FC is very stiff, it doesn't flex, and it has no stretch. In the Puyallup River, it's very good to have stretch in your leader because you can't see where that fish is underwater to net it. So a lot of times you go to net it and you might miss, and your buddy's going to have to take a couple stabs at it. So you want a little bit of stretch in your leaders. On top of that, it's a lot more expensive, so why use it? This works really good. We get streaks of 10 in a row, 9 in a row. We're trying to have competitions with how many we can catch in a row with this setup, you guys. So go ahead and just use moss green. Iserline is a great brand to use. It's really strong for the price. Hooks. Let's talk about the hooks first. The hook I like to use is very small. It's a small number 4 hook, and there's a reason we use a small hook. That fish wants something that's minuscule, and what I do is I tie something that's basically called a fly. If you look at the description of a fly, that is something where it has the float tied to the back of the hook, and that's what we're doing with our rigs. So the size of hook is very important. You don't want big, giant 1/0 hooks. Even number 2s, I don't even use those very often. Sometimes I do in bigger water for a little bit bigger fish, but not necessarily. I catch a lot of kings on this number 4. It's really good because it doesn't get snagged into the fish very easy either. It pops off. That being said, we're going to use a number 4 hook, and we're going to use a number 12 or 8mm or so size float. Now I've got 7mm, and it usually takes about 2 of these little 7mm pills right here. If I put 2 of these together, it floats pretty close to the same buoyancy as this setup right here. It's maybe a little bit higher. These are 7mm pills, but they're not long. So you got to kind of really give it for what it is, and that's why I always show you that depth that I want my setup to be at. So if you have a different float and you want to put it on the back of a hook, the key is get this to float to where that cheater or that bead, whatever the setup rig you have, it barely breaks the surface of the water, just under the surface of the water. It doesn't sink to the bottom, doesn't float up on the top. It goes in the water and it just sinks part way. Not all the way, just part way down on the surface of the water. The next one I set up, it's going to go down about halfway. And I do this in a glass of water, the bathtub, whatever you want to do. Get those different buoyancies just right. It's very important because when you get to a different speed of water, you're going to want to be able to change that setup subtly, not too much, because the faster the water, the faster it may push it down or push it up in the water column, depending on the buoyancy and the density of that gear. If it's really big and fat, it's going to push it up really high. If it's in slower water, that might sink down really low. So it just depends on the speed of the water, a lot of it. When you get into these different rigs, if you target that buoyancy that I'm talking about, where it just barely breaks the surface of the water floating, you're going to have pretty good success. So we're going with my favorite hook for the cost and how strong and how good they last is the Owner hook. It's the side drifting hook number 4. I get them in red now, so you can get them in black. This is the SSW is the type you're looking for that they have. This comes in 50 and it is labeled steelhead on here. This part's very important. It's not in my last drift fishing videos. On that hook, you can see this angle on the hook right here. It banks off to an angle instead of straight up and down. That's very important in order for a cheater, which is our main float that we like to use, because it's got this long back right here, and when these come together, that exit of that cheater right there and the entrance, it goes just like this, and it makes a perfect angle coming out, and so it sits straight up and down. And that's how we want that setup. We don't want it all cocked at an angle, up at an angle like this, you know, floating through the water. We want it down just like this, so when it swings through the water, it comes right at the fish like this. When they go to nibble it and mouth it, that hook is facing their tongue. That's why we want it on the back of the hook. When it swings through the water, it turns that hook the furthest part away because it's the heaviest. And with that fish, when he mouths it in and he sucks it in, and honk, that hook isn't facing outside of his mouth. It's facing inside of his mouth. So we get a lot of these fish stuck right on the inside or the back of that tongue, and that's where you want it. They dig in deep and they can't spit it out even when it's barbless. So it's very important to have that tied right to the back of that hook. And that's just one of the reasons why we like to do that. Besides, it makes it look small, and it makes it look minuscule, and it looks like a small fly. Now you see how it sits straight up and down? That's because of the angle of this. That's because the angle of this eye that it sits straight up and down. You can see how it sits when I let go of it. Okay, if that angle of the eye on the hook is straight, this thing sits at an angle like this, and it's all kind of cattywampus. So you want it just like that. Tie it to the back of the hook. I'm going to show you now how I tie it on here real quick. Go ahead and wrap this around. And these foam rollers, you can get them very cheap at Lowe's. You can get the toy ones for the pool or whatever, and just scar it with a knife around here and wrap these around. And then I just get tubing, whatever size you get, some PVC, put it in there, and it makes it nice and firm. It's very cheap, and it makes these pre-ties easy to pack a lot of them and carry them around. So again, we're just going to grab our iser line. And I like to start and carry around with me 7.5 feet. And the reason is I like to be able to trim that down all the way to 2 feet if I need to. And if I need to go a little bit longer to get it to float a little bit more naturally and away from my weight, I can let it do that in more clear water, which is what I like to do. So I'm going to start at 7.5. That's one pull for me here, and just another half from my chest with my elbow in, just like that. And that's about 7.5 plus 2 inches for the knots. Okay? Now all you do is take this, and I like to hold this in my hand with my pinky wrapped around so it doesn't slide away on me. And you're just going to take a fisherman's knot, a clinch knot, or a cinch knot, whatever you want to call it. Just go into it like that right there and grab the line. Now if you don't have enough tail in there to go back through it, go ahead and give yourself a little bit more. Now, what I'm going to do is spin this 7 times, but first, everybody spins it 7 times, then they get it wet. Get it wet first. That way it's in between everywhere. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Grab that tag in and go back through the loop. I like to use my teeth. My dentist says no. Matter of fact, this video might get squashed because I chipped my tooth, and I don't like to show everybody that. I got an appointment to get my chipped tooth fixed, so I'm not toothless or dentist list. I do have an appointment. Leave about 1/8 of an inch there for a tag in. Now you see how I just pulled that knot down and cinched it down, just a regular clinch knot, and I help it out so I don't bend that line or burn that line and get it damaged at all. Now this is just 10-pound test. When I told you about the line, I'm using 10-pound line. These are pink salmon. They're not very big, and even the kings you get in there and the kings in the coho, I do not pull very hard, so I can catch all of those on 10-pound line, and it floats better in the water. The density isn't so high that it gets pushed up into the water column and above them. It stays down just above their eyes is where this setup is tuned to strike. Now for color on the Puyallup River, doesn't matter that much because the water is a little bit dark. They see a flash of just about anything and it might entice them to strike. They're not eating in the river, but they might be agitated and they might be striking at stuff that's pink and looks like their normal bait just to mouth it and maybe get a little nutrients and spit it out. But they're really not eating it. but you want that to catch their attention. So a lot of us are using pink in the rivers too, and I just go over here to my pink cheater setups, or you can use a pink corky, one or the other. The pink corky, it floats a little bit lower than this. So what I do is I pre-tie. I have cheaters that are pre-tied on the number 4 hook. I've got corkies that are pre-tied on the number 4 hook. I'll show you a corky here. This is a corky. I've got both of these pre-tied just like this because this floats just a little bit lower in the water column than the cheater does. It's a little bit smaller. I don't like the way it sits on the hook at an angle a little bit, but they still do work. I still get a lot of fish with them when I need it to get a little bit lower in the water column because the water is too slow and the other cheater floats up a little bit above their backs, and if I start snagging them in the backs and bringing in scales, I know it's floating too high. I bump it down to a smaller float. You can go with something like this, or again, something like one of these. They're just a fish pill, a red fish pill. It floats in its foam. 2 of those little 7mm ones float just about like this, and then one of these little floats float almost about like this. So you can kind of use this setup. What I do is what I currently have, instead of hard beads, I have these with a single number 4 hook. That's the fish pill, 7mm. I have this number 12 corky on a number 4 hook, and I have these cheaters on a number 4 hook. And this is a number 12, this is a number 12, and this is labeled as a 7mm. So that can give you a good idea if you're getting your other floats by millimeter size. That's why if you get maybe an 8 or a 9, it's going to be close to this. I've got 10mm pills that are right here, and these seem like they're a little bit bigger right here than my corky or my cheater. So this is like yet one size bigger, and again, this will still work good too, but against the number 4 hook, this starts getting too big. If you want to use this, go to a number 2 hook. I like to keep it small, keep it minuscule, keep it simple, and they will be more likely to suck it in and to spit it out with ease, especially on a bad barometric pressure day where they're lethargic and they're off the bite and inactive. Okay guys, so now we've got the knot tied to the back of the shank on your hook. Now you're just going to go ahead and pull all the slack out. And we're going to go ahead in this instance for tying up some pink setups. We want it to look like a little squid in there to have them familiar and really get them to strike at it. We're going to keep and stick with the pink. So go ahead and run the leader tag end right through the cheater just like that. Bring that tag in and go back through the back side of the hook here. Okay, so we're going to be pinning it. You can see that there. We're going to be pinning this to the back side of the hook like this. Number 4 hook with a float tied to the back of it. And now we're going to use a little piece of yarn. Sometimes you see me using different colors. Again, this water is very dark, very murky, even on a sunny day. So you want to have some bright colors, and we're going to use the right smell. The pink salmon are fish that eat squid. And so we're going to be using squid smell, and we're going to put it on this yarn. Now, we don't need a big piece of yarn on here. Don't have a big giant piece. You're going to mess this all up. Here's why. It's not just buoyancy. The yarn doesn't float that much, and people don't realize, though, the bigger it is, the more buoyancy, the more density it has. So it's not just buoyancy, it's density too. So if this is a big piece of yarn like this right here, that water dense is going to push it up because the density is going to grab the entire surface of this and keep it up off the bottom and above the fish. So you want to keep this small. We're not trying to make this a big yarny, okay? Just very small piece so that it will help hold the scent on the bottom of that float. You already have a float on here. Now we have something that looks like little wings. And if you want, you can even put a little eye on there. You really don't need to. They're going to smell this, smell squid on it. Looks like a little piece of squid swimming by them, and they're not going to hesitate to smack that at all. Now again, we're using 10-pound line. You can use 12-pound if you're new or familiar. I will be using 12-pound on the Puyallup strictly because I'm going to be having to horse fish up past people, and I don't want to break my leaders off. I might even throw 15-pound on. So there are times that you're going to want to use a bigger leader. If you're going to be combat fishing, definitely go with a 10, a 12, or a 15-pound test. If you got area to fight the fish and take your time and have fun, then get 10-pound. It's going to float a lot better. You have to play the fish. You got to sit there and let them get tired. Don't bend your rod in half trying to drag them in. Play them out for a minute. Now, this setup has really got a lot of fish for a lot of people. If you look in the comments of my last video, this setup is absolutely deadly because it floats just above their eye level right here, and it's really easy for them to just suck it in and smack at it. It's not way up here, it's not down underneath them. Fish do not look down and hunt down. They might see down, but they're really not chasing stuff down there very much. In Puget Sound, they go after those candlefish, but once they're in the rivers and stuff like that, it's inconvenient for them to even look down after stuff. So you want to really have it up above their eyes. This is going to be about what you want for the Puyallup River. Again, 10 to 15-pound test. If they're new kids, you make sure they're going to catch a lot of fish. Go ahead and throw that 15-pound on there, especially if they're in a big line of people and they got to reel those fish in fast. You're just going to lose a lot more when you're fighting them like that, because the ones that are barely hooked on the lip will just break the lip. So I always try and play my fish out, walk down past people, unless I'm in a spot where there's just no end to all the people. Then you just reel them up to you, unhook them. Look at my hip holder for your rod holder so you can have your hands free when you unhook the fish and drop it back in and back to fishing. Okay, so one more thing here. Again, I'm using these cheaters right now, but sometimes you cannot get the black. Actually, a lot of times you cannot get the black. I haven't been able to get the black for quite some time, so that's why I've improvised and I've gone with another color. The reason I use black eyes is because I want it to look like a bug. I want it to be minuscule like a fly. So just change it up. Go ahead and get the cheaters that have the black dots on them and throw black yarn on there. And that's my go-to setup right here. So here's some black cheaters with a little bit of red yarn on them, okay? And here are some black with black yarn. And here's double red pills with a small piece of black yarn. And these ones, you know, we'll put a piece of black yarn and a little single pill and a little bit bigger piece of yarn on these because it'll help that pill match the buoyancy of this setup. Okay, but it's going to be a little teeny bit lower, but have that yarn on there. It looks like some wings, plus it holds the smell on there. So this will most likely have some shrimp smell. As far as the flossing goes, with a setup like this, when it's set up to catch a lot of fish by enticing them to strike it, by floating just above their eyes, it's going to incidentally floss a lot of fish. Because it's down in their strike zone, if the fish is swimming around, this can get caught in their mouth very easily and then get caught on the outside of their face on what's called the maxilla bone. When that happens, it is perfectly legal to keep. We do not try to do that. We're trying to get them to strike at it in the strike zone just above their face. And you'll see in all my videos, we're catching a lot of fish. We have no reason to be yanking or running 12-foot leaders. When you do drift fishing setup techniques just like this, and if that water is short or shallow, go to 5 feet, 4 feet, 3 feet, 2 feet, get it in that zone where those fish are at, and you're gonna be dialed in. Make sure you have pre-tied leaders like this set up, and then trim from 7 feet down to 2 feet, and you're covering a lot of ground, folks. You're making your odds go a lot higher. Don't just sit there and watch people catch fish while you're not. There is a reason, and usually it's because it's floating way too high, or it's floating underneath them because you have a big bare hook with a piece of yarn on it, and it just goes underneath them. And the only way you're going to catch them is by yanking at the end and hoping you snag into one. And that is literally the definition of trying to snag a fish, when you're just hopefully yanking every cast at the end of the drift. Even if you were flossing, to do it the proper way, you still have to wait till you feel that interaction of the fish and then yank at the end of the drift. If you don't, you're just going to hopelessly snag into their bellies, their tails, their backs, and you're going to waste time trying to land that fish while the other fish move through and take off and move on. You have to let some snagged fish go. So trust me, drift fishing works a lot better than intentionally trying to floss the fish. Just drift fish, you'll still get your floss fish numbers. My ratios are probably 60 to 70. So don't hesitate to make sure you tie a lot of different leaders. Make sure you get lots of different hooks, lots of leaders, lots of hooks so that you can have your adjustments. Sometimes I will go a number 1 hook, a number 2, or a number 4, depending on the depth of water. Most rivers I'm just running this number 4. This is my most common rig right here, and this has caught a lot of fish for the feedback. Check it out online. See you on the next one. Make sure you share, subscribe.
If you'll do me a favor, I haven't had a chance to get a picture of it yet.